All right, let's dive in, shall we? Today, we're going deep on energy sources. Like where does our power actually come from? And why should we even care?
It's more important than ever.
Totally. And we've got this document. It's kind of like a student worksheet about energy, I think. All sorts of stuff on here. Fossil fuels, renewable energy. You're looking to get a better grasp on all this.
Absolutely. Break it down for us.
Awesome. We'll unpack it all, compare renewable and non-renewable sources. I bet we even find some surprising stuff along the way. What do you think?
Let's do it. Always up for some energy surprises.
Okay, so right off the bat, this worksheet is throwing around terms like, renewable energy, non-renewable, fossil fuels. Can you give us like a quick energy 101 on those?
Yeah, for sure. I think the simplest way to think about it is this. Renewable energy sources, they can replenish themselves. They're like constantly regenerating.
Got it.
Non-renewable sources, they're finite. We're using them up, and they're not coming back anytime soon.
Makes sense.
And fossil fuels, that's the classic example of non-renewable energy. They formed from ancient organic matter like plants and animals from like millions of years ago. Buried deep underground, they transformed over time.
Wow, so we're talking about like dinosaur leftovers powering our cars.
Well, not exactly dinosaurs, but you get the idea. It's ancient stuff.
Okay, so then we've got the big three fossil fuels listed here. Coal, crude oil, and natural gas. What's the difference between them?
They all come from different types of organic matter, and they formed under different conditions, too. Coal is mostly from ancient plants.
Okay.
Crude oil and natural gas are more from marine organisms, like stuff that lived in the ocean.
Makes sense.
And this, of course, gives them different properties, like coal is solid, crude oil liquid, natural gas. Well, it's a gas.
Right.
We use them for different things, like electricity generation, transportation fuels, and heating our homes.
So it's not just like they're all non-renewable. It's way more nuanced than that. But burning any of them, that's what releases those greenhouse gases, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's a huge problem with fossil fuels. Climate change, air pollution, and a whole bunch of other environmental issues. It's not just about using them up, it's the impact they have while we're using them.
Yeah, that makes sense. So that brings us to those renewable alternatives.
Yeah.
This worksheet's got a whole list. Wind power, geothermal energy, solar power, biofuels, hydropower, and even nuclear power. Whew. Where do we even start?
Let's start with a couple that directly harness natural forces. Wind power, for example, those iconic wind turbines. They capture the kinetic energy of moving air, and then, boom, electricity.
So we're basically using something that's already happening, the wind, and turning it into power. That's pretty neat.
It is. And then there's geothermal. It taps into the heat from deep inside the Earth. Imagine harnessing energy from the Earth's core.
Wow. So with wind, we're taking advantage of the wind, and with geothermal, we're using the Earth's own heat. That's incredible.
Right. And then we have solar power. It directly converts sunlight into electricity using these things called photovoltaic cells. Clean energy, getting cheaper all the time, and, well, sunlight. That's pretty much unlimited, right?
Yeah, good point. I've actually been thinking about getting solar panels for my roof. But aren't there, like, drawbacks? Like, what happens when it's cloudy?
That's a good question. Solar energy is intermittent, which means it's not always available. So we need good ways to store the energy for when the sun isn't shining. Those storage technologies, they're still being developed.
So it's not just the panels themselves, it's the whole infrastructure around it. Okay, what about biofuels? They're made from organic matter, right? But how does that become energy we can actually use?
There are a few ways to do it. Essentially, we're converting plants or even animal waste into fuels. They can power vehicles or generate electricity.
Okay.
Sounds great in theory. But, there are some trade-offs. Like if we use corn for ethanol, well, that can drive up food prices. And it can cause conflicts over how we use land.
So again, it's not just about being renewable. It's about the whole picture, right? The impact of making and using those fuels. Which brings us to hydropower. That seems pretty simple. Using the flow of water to make electricity.
Yep, hydropower uses dams and reservoirs, to harness the energy of moving water. It's a reliable technology. We've been doing it for a while. But it does have some environmental and social costs. Dams can disrupt ecosystems, they can displace communities, and sometimes they even contribute to greenhouse gas emissions from the vegetation that decomposes in the reservoirs.
Wow, it's complicated. Every energy source has its own set of benefits and challenges.
Yeah.
And then there's nuclear power, which always seems to be, well, controversial, right? Why is that?
Nuclear power is unique. It uses nuclear fission, which means splitting atoms to release energy. And we're talking tons of energy, so it's really powerful. But that also means there are concerns about safety. Radioactive waste disposal is another big one. And of course, there's always that potential for accidents, which is scary. And then you have the geopolitical stuff like uranium mining and the possibility of nuclear weapons.
So even with all these different options, it's not like there's one perfect solution, is there?
Yeah.
It's about weighing those pros and cons.
Exactly. When we're comparing energy sources, we got to think about cost, environmental impact, reliability, safety, and even those social and political factors. It's a pretty complex puzzle.
This has been really eye-opening. Choosing our energy sources, it's definitely not simple.
Hmm.
We've looked at the differences between renewable and non-renewable,
Yeah.
delved into specific types of energy, and we've even touched on some of those tough trade-offs.
And remember, there's no one-size-fits-all answer. The best energy choices are going to be different depending on location, the available resources, and, societal priorities.
So here's something to think about. Imagine you're in charge of planning the energy future for your community. What mix of sources would you choose, and why? What factors would be most important to you? It's a complex issue, but the more we understand, the better choices we can make. And that's how we build a sustainable future, right?
Could have said it better myself. Knowledge is power, especially when it comes to energy.
All right, that's our deep dive for today. We'll catch you next time.
See you then.